Hello and welcome to Jessie James Beads. My name is Jem and we're working with Year of the Snake. I have this absolutely fabulous Entwined serpent centerpiece to work with today. Now it already has loops up at the top, so you can add into that with chain, either with attached clasps or you can go for little rosary links. The main thing that I want to achieve today is to encrust seed beads around the lower edges of this fabulous piece. Let's head down to the board and talk about the materials we'll use today. Here's the fantastic Entwined Serpent's centerpiece. How beautiful is that? You've already got those loops ready-made to work with. If you're a dab hand with nail varnish or resin, you could certainly enhance those eye sockets a little further. I have some 11-0 seed beads with just a beautiful shimmer to them. And we'll also be working with some 26 gauge round wire. Now, if I was making this to wear for myself, I would definitely use a silver wire to go with this silver colour form. However, because I want you to be able to see what's happening, I'm going to use some round copper wire today. Now, I've cut around about a 24-inch length. Now, that means that we'll be able to work quite a long amount of weaving onto this design. But you will need to add on the next section a little bit later on. I'll tell you when we get there. I'm going to lay around about an inch of wire over the top of the design, and I'm just going to wind that round at least 4 times, as close to that end loop as I possibly can. Now, it doesn't matter if you work from the right or the left, whichever makes you happy. But what we're looking to do is to get a really good, strong, tight connection to that entwined serpent. Just make sure that everything sits down nice and flat, and when you're happy that that's neat and tidy, give it a very gentle squish. Now, this is going to take a little bit of time with these 11 zeros. You could work with slightly larger seed beads if you wanted to, or you could go for some small round metal beads as well. They would be absolutely perfect. So let's add in one of those seed beads at a time. I'm just going to demonstrate the basic technique to you a couple of times because me threading on beads is a bit dull. So let's bring that seed bead all the way down so that it sits against that beautiful entwined serpent form. So I'm going to hold the bead so it sits against the underside of that form. I'm just going to pinch that. You will lose sight of it underneath my nail. The tail of that wire is going to come underneath, and we're going to wrap twice around the frame itself. And what we're looking to have is for that seed bead to sit neatly against the underside of this gorgeous entwined serpent frame. So that's around once and then around a second time. When I say the underside, I mean as you're looking at it, we're going to encrust along the lower edges, not underneath, because that would be a bit silly. You wouldn't be able to see them. So I'm going to add in one more, and then I will leave you for a little while whilst I add the rest of these beads into position. The 11-0 seed beads I've chosen to work with today have a beautiful, almost aurora borealis feel to them, or an aura coating perhaps. As you take that small bead and sit it in position, it will tip, and that's exactly what we want because you get to see a much funkier version of the bead when it's slightly tilted. So hold your bead into position, and then you're going to wrap twice around that frame again. So that's once and twice. So you can see already that we're going to build up a really lovely glittery addition to the entwined serpents. I'm going to continue all the way along until I meet the snake's head just here. You are certainly looking for some tension in those wraps when you're creating this design so that the beads stay in position. If they wibble around a little bit, it doesn't really matter as long as they stay on the underside. So you're going to continue doing 2 wraps around that frame before you add your next bead into position. There's a stray, let's pop him back in the bowl. So let's slide that one down in. Now this was 24 inches of wire. You can see we've got less than 6 inches left, and that's just the first section. Wrap twice around that frame. Now as you get close to the snake's head, you're going to want to try and leave yourself as much space as possible because we can get just one more bead in there, I think. So let's add that final bead onto the wire. slide that all the way down, and then we're going to finish off with, if we can fit it, 3 wraps on the end of the little section of wrapping we've just done. If that doesn't work, you can bring that wire all the way across the back, all the way around, and just try to sneak that down inside. So you've got 2 good sturdy wraps. Now there's around about 5 inches of wire remaining, which may be enough to just get into that middle section just so. So I'm going to draw the wire diagonally across the back, and this is one of the reasons I've gone for a copper colour, so that you can see that moving diagonally. If I flip the design back over, I'm just going to take the end of that wire, post it down through the entwined serpent section, and bring that wire up and away. So I will continue adding the last couple of beads to meet in the very centre. I'm going to stop slightly shy and then finish with 3 wraps, cutting carefully and securing down by pressing against those wires. What I will then do is the exact same thing but in reverse. So I will wind on 3 or 4 times at the far end and then add beads all the way along, cross over behind the serpent design here and draw a close to it in the centre. If you do run out of wire, you can always add a little more just by going back to the last point that you were able to hide those wraps. So in that instance, just here, but I feel that we will have enough wire to go over the top, and I'll meet you back in just a moment. I finished wrapping those last few beads on the underside of the serpent from the left hand side where we began, and I've managed to fit 3 wraps around that segment, and I'm going to protect that seed bead whilst I just very softly press down to ensure that those wraps are neat and tidy. Now I'm going to repeat the exact same process on the other side, so I will commence with about 24 to 26 inches of 26 gauge wire. And I will do 2 wraps around the frame between each bead, and I'll add them on the underside, crossing behind the serpent's head just here and finishing just towards that centre. Then we'll take a look at what we've done and see if we need to add anything else on. I've completed wrapping on those beautiful little seed beads from the other side all the way to the centre point. So now we have a symmetrically glitzy, glamorous look. And to add further to the multi-tonal wire and metal colours that we have here, I thought I would add in this gorgeous golden pendant with those beautiful green stones. In order to attach this to that entwined serpent centrepiece, I have a 6-inch length of 18 gauge round wire. I'm just going to give that a quick warm through, and we're going to grab a round form just to make a nice little curve in the centre. So I'm going to grab the second smallest of my mandrels, and this one is 0.37 of an inch, 9.5 millimeters, about the same as one of the pins on your bail making pliers. So I'm just going to twist that wire all the way around the post. You could use a pencil if you don't have one of those, and I'm just going to push that ever so slightly closer together. What we're going to do is to warm through those ends and just slither our serpent down into the centre. See what I did there? So we will have copper, silver, gold and green all together, which I think is absolutely magnificent. So just very gently pinching that section of wire together to give it a slight movement. What we're going to do now is trim to around about 2 inches in length. So if I just trim that away, you could use a slightly shorter piece of wire if you're being thrifty today. And what we're going to do now is to create some spirals in opposing directions. I'm going to use the smaller side of my memory wire finishing pliers just to create some circular forms. One going outwards on the right and one going outwards on the left. So we'll spin that around and then switch over to my favourite flat facing pliers, which are my bent chain nose pliers, and I'm going to make a couple of spirals in this quite firm wire. Now I don't know whether or not I'm going to want to keep this beautiful piece permanently attached to my Entwined serpent centerpiece, but this gives me the option to add it on and keep it nice and securely until I decide if I want to use it as a standalone pendant somewhere else. So let's just draw those all the way around. This is very similar to an Egyptian chain design. Making sure that there's a little bit of warmth in those end sections of wire. What we're going to do now is to push those backwards. So I'm going to grip just before the spiral on that side piece of wire, on first one side, and then trying to keep it similar on the other side. So I've got those spirals going back at about 90 degrees to begin with. And then I'm going to push them through, like so. And if I just show you that sitting on the top, to begin with, what we're going to do is just pull those down the back. So very, very firmly draw both of those wires around. If I flip that over for you, you can see that those spirals grip very firmly onto the Entwined serpent centerpiece, but we now have extra detail on our piece. I've added in some chain with some lobster clasps, but you could very simply just go for a rosary link directly into those really useful loops if you prefer. Well, I do hope that you have enjoyed our Entwined Serpents video today. My name is Jem and this is Jessie James Beads. Have a beautiful day.